Linda Peng, welcome to the hexdevs podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, we met at Indie Hackers in Vancouver a few weeks ago. And I had to leave early, so I didn't really get a chance to talk to you both that much. But yeah, thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, we were really excited to talk with you because we thought your album was really cool. And so Stephanie said, "Hey, we should call Linda and see if she wants to come to the show." So thanks for coming. So Linda has a lot of experience with front-end development. She's the creator of CodeBuddies.org, an international community of very nice people helping each other get better at software development via organized study groups, live coding hangouts, and Slack discussions. She also has an album called Violin.play with awesome songs. Some of the songs include A Walk Through the Binary Tree Forest, What Is This?, Callback Hell, Superclass. So make sure to check it out. So Linda, where do you find the inspiration to compose these songs about coding?
That's a good question. Well, the song titles were actually a joke in the beginning. I knew I always wanted to write original music. So I guess the background there is my mom is a professional violinist, and so I took lessons from her mostly in classical violin since when I was very young. And I've always wanted to compose music for film or for video games. And a few years ago, I started experimenting with a loop pedal, which lets you repeat like layer phrases of melodies on top of each other. And I started kind of experimenting with some original music there. And the music album became a code-inspired music album, partly because of the looping. It's very prevalent in the music, like a lot of the repetitive layers, and it's also a theme in programming. So my husband is actually very good at puns, and he had some ideas for what my song titles could be called, which is how we end up with an album with kind of a lot of programming jokes for each song.
That is so cool. I mean, the songs are really great. If I'm gonna leave I'm gonna leave the link in the description notes. So if you listen to this podcast and I assume you know how to code or are learning, so you are going to relate to the songs. Like today, I was listening to it while I was trying to debug an error, and it was really fun. It's like it's really fun to listen to it. And so my question is, do you usually listen to music while you are coding? Because some people can't, right? So I'm curious to know how does that work for you?
Yeah, that's a good question also. So the answer is I don't. I can't. Because when I hear music, I think a lot of people say that they can't listen to music that has lyrics because the lyrics are distracting. And I agree with that. But also regular music, like instrumentals that even don't have lyrics, they're also distracting to me because I hear the notes themselves. So yeah, I think sometimes if I do end up listening to music, I have to make sure it's music on loop or so that I can get into the zone. Otherwise, it's distracting for me. But I'm really glad that you and other people who've checked out the songs are enjoying it and are finding it useful and not distracting. Yeah.
It would be interesting to listen to your album while writing code. It would be like
A loop.
a loop, yeah.
I hope there's one song in there called Forever For Loops, which I ended up putting in one of my YouTube videos. And that song is kind of now stuck in my head because editing videos, you're just like listening or watching the same video clip over and over again.
So you said you wanted to compose music for video games. So what is your favorite video game music?
Do you both play video games?
I play just like one or two. Tiago plays it more.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I don't personally have time to play a lot of video games. One video game that I grew up playing was Age of Empires, and that had pretty good music. It's a very old game though.
Yeah, I love the music in this video game. Age of Empires 2?
Oh yeah, Age of Empires too.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I like, I don't know, people have been telling me that the music in this album reminds them of video game music, so I'm hoping that one day I'll see it in the video game. I think that would be really cool.
So I have a question about your background. Like how did you start coding professionally? Because did you go like to a boot camp or something? Were you working with music before you started working with coding? How was your
journey? Yeah. So I didn't think I would ever get a software job when I was growing up because my dad was a programmer, and all I remember is that he had a lot of programming books, like O'Reilly books and SQL and Perl books at home, and it seemed kind of boring to me, honestly. But I studied. I didn't study music in college. I studied economics and public policy, which are social sciences. And I was really interested in like nonprofit work and social entrepreneurship, and interested in like careers that could make an impact. And so when I first graduated from college, I worked at a nonprofit called MoveOn.org for a couple of years. And they gave me the opportunity to switch into doing web development from, I started out as an analytics analyst. So I was like doing more data things, and then I kind of switched into doing front-end development from there. And this was in 2013. And I never went to a boot camp, but I think at one point I considered it, but then that point passed, and I realized there was a lot I was learning from my coworkers, and I started a open source project called Code Buddies, which I think you mentioned earlier, which also helped me in terms of like learning from people around the world who knew more than me about software development. So yeah, I don't have. I think boot camps are a good decision for people who want to dedicate themselves and have the time or the money. But I think a lot of people I know also who don't have the degrees have also been able to have had a similar story where they've been able to get the opportunities from a job and transition into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is really good. So talking about the Code Buddies project, and so you mentioned that it was it was this desire of you to work in social project and everything. So tell us a little bit about the Code Buddies and who should join Code Buddies.
I actually have I think by the time this podcast is published, there will be a blog post out where I wrote about 10 lessons I learned from working on open source and working on like Code Buddies specifically. But basically it started because, sorry, I'm trying to figure out the best way to summarize the story.
It's okay.
Well, part of the reason it exists is because at MoveOn.org, my first job, I was working remotely, and I, like in 2013, 2014, I saw the value in remote meetups and the idea that you don't necessarily have to go to a meetup in person in order to find study partners or people who can help you become a better programmer. And I was living in New York City at the time and going to a lot of in-person meetups and like hackathons and having a lot of fun, like finding people who are also really interested in learning to code and like improving their software development skills. And I guess the short story is that summer there was a class, a program I enrolled in called Orbital that helps people launch their ideas for a side project. And I launched CodeBuddies just as like a landing page that signed people up into like a Google group mailing list. And it was for people who were interested in like studying remotely with other people at any time of the day. So someone would send out like an email saying, hey, does anyone want to go through Eloquent JavaScript chapter 1? And then we'll meet at 7 p.m. Eastern, which will be like another time completely in a different country, right? And then they get like other people who were receiving emails, and then suddenly you have like 3 different people in 3 different time zones all like discussing what they learned from that chapter or pair programming on something, which I thought was a wonderful way to learn, because when you're screen sharing, you can easily debug like if someone is stuck in the middle of a tutorial or something. But yeah, I personally really enjoy pair programming with people as a way to learn. I think there's a lot of like kind of even little computer tricks that you can learn from just looking at someone's screen. But that was kind of the nexus of the spark of inspiration for what CodeBuddies is. And then eventually we decided we needed to create a actual website for this, which is now CodeBuddies.org, which a lot of people contributed to. And there's a very active Slack community in it as well. Sorry, that was a very long answer to like who CodeBuddies. Oh, I didn't answer who CodeBuddies is for, and the answer is it's for like anybody in the world who want to improve their software development skills.
And how do you create a community that is friendly to beginners? Like, because this is sometimes it's hard, because like some of the more experienced developers, maybe they don't want to coach juniors or everything. So how do you attract people that want to share their knowledge, but also make them like, but also keep them engaged and make them like be friendly to the beginners, you know?
tried to do from the beginning is to model good behavior. So when someone is asking a question, I'll ask clarifying questions. I'll answer beginner questions like patiently. And I think, CodeBuddies is an all volunteer community. So especially on Slack, there are people who they sign up and then they're in too many Slacks, so they don't ever participate. And then other people who see that see a Slack thread where someone has been very honest with their help. So I think the thing that's kept kind of the supportive, friendly feeling going is just people seeing other people being friendly and perhaps calling out people or calling out messages that are not as friendly and reporting that to the moderators, for example. We also have a Slack bot that if someone types in a question that's a little bit generic, it'll respond with a message that tries to share how best to ask a more detailed question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To me, personally, I think that the idea of Code Buddies being an international and remote community is super valuable because I was born and I lived a lot of years in a very small city in Brazil and nothing happened there. So having this community for people from all across the world, definitely it was a really good call. So it's pretty nice that Code Buddies is growing up. And do you know how many users are on Code Buddies now?
I think there are around 300 active users, and over 6,000 or 7,000 people have signed up in the past.
Nice. And
yeah. So it's a pretty small community still. And honestly, my biggest worry is people who sign up on the website and don't get what they want out of it, their motivations for initially signing up, which is still, I think, something that myself and other people who really care about this project are trying to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And what about the future of Code Buddies? Do you want to grow the community? Do you want to add more people? What are your plans for the future?
So my main goals for this project are to make it sustainable. I'd like to be able to stop working on it and have it continue to live on. I'm not entirely, so one dream of mine when I first started it was remote meetups happening like 3 or 4 times a day. The idea of multiple people being able to learn together and meet together at any time of the day on any programming topic that they wanted to discuss more actively. And I don't think we've gotten to that point. But I don't have personal numbers or, data-driven goals around that because I treat it as this is a project that that's mission-driven, and I'm very happy when it helps people, but it's not a full-time job sort of thing. Even though it has a nonprofit mission, I'm glad when it helps people, but I'm not treating it as by next year we will serve 10,000 people or anything. At the moment, like the immediate future is that so the project is open source, and then I'm kind of building. I'm exploring like rebuilding the website using some new technologies. Right now it's using Meteor.js, and we're exploring rebuilding it using React on the front end, and either Go serverless Node or Django on the back end. And I'm hoping that like rebuilding the website, rethinking some UX parts of it will help potentially like help new people who join and help them get connected to what they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're doing great, and it's a really good project. So congrats on that. I really hope Code Buddies grows not only like in a big numbers, but in a matter of how much it contributes to the community. And I will definitely check it out. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for asking about it.
So Stephanie and I, we're really interested in like mentoring people that want to start learning coding and programming, and we're gonna do the Rails Girls by the end of the month, so October
26th.
Yeah, October 26th, we're gonna have the first Rails Girls event in Vancouver, and it's focused on people that just want to learn how to code. They never work with Rails or anything, or Ruby. They can learn a little bit, spend the day building stuff, so it's really cool. And also, so we want to start doing coding dojos here in Vancouver, and I'm wondering if you have some tips for us, because we want to make it very friendly to beginners. Do you have any tips on that?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I've also volunteered in the past for like those types of workshops where I've mentored or taught beginners. And the thing that at least I personally watch out for are people who struggle and are like stuck on one step because they're missing something like very small. And I mean, I'm sure like the events that you'll be organizing and volunteering at are like well organized already, but I think one thing that has helped that I've noticed is really helpful in general is having multiple TAs around who can like just circle around and then watch out for people who are raising their hands because they're stuck on something. That's the first thing that pops up to me, where I've noticed if you have one instructor and like 20 people, it's very easy for the one person to get overwhelmed because everyone learns at a different pace. I guess one quick thought is the really wonderful thing about participating or volunteering in those types of events is I think the other volunteers that you attract, just like for example through CodeBuddies and also through other things I've volunteered for, it's really great meeting people who are just super generous with their time and with their feedback also. So I think it's
okay. So still about CodeBuddies. So it's usually correct me if I'm wrong, but the way it works is, for example, I will say, oh, I'm gonna do a hangouts about RSpec, for example. But so let's say that I want to learn. Does CodeBuddies also help with that?
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, that's the kind of the tricky part of the UX that we still want to figure out. because right now I think a lot of people who want to learn aren't as comfortable scheduling those hangouts, because then they have to take some sort of leadership role in figuring out a time, and also people have different like expectations of, oh, if I'm scheduling a hangout, does that mean I need to like lead everyone through something I don't know already? But the idea, or that I've tried to convey for hangouts, is that it's for people who just want to create a space for studying a particular topic, and you don't have to necessarily be an expert at it. I think some people I've noticed, like they ask on the CodeBuddy Slack first if anyone else is interested in, like, for example, studying RSpec, and then they get some responses, and they figure out a good time that works for the people who are interested, schedule it on the website, and then meet up at that scheduled time. But yeah, in general, I think getting to the point from, oh, I think I want to learn something with other people, how do I find them, that step is something that I'm hoping that we can improve on the website.
I think I would definitely use Code Buddies.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is organizing people. And like the CodeBuddies hangouts are also competing with like in-person meetups and, you know, anything else. So yeah, that is a thing I found out. It isn't like an issue, but when I've scheduled hangouts, even if just one person shows up, and then it's really fun to just have a conversation with someone and like study together on some issue with sometimes even a total stranger, and as long as we stay on topic, it's just really fun.
Do people record the meetings, like, and then they upload on YouTube, for example?
Yeah, people have done that in the past where they've recorded, and it's usually up to the discretion of the person who scheduled the hangout. So they'll typically ask the rest of the group, hey, is it okay if I record? But I think there have been over 1,000 hangouts scheduled, like in the history of the project, right? And most of them were not recorded because it's also meant as a private space where, you know, if you're a beginner and you're struggling, you don't want your pair programming struggling session to be recorded necessarily.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right. So going back a little bit to your musical experience, do you apply any of the lessons from your musical background to your coding day to day?
I guess so. I'd be curious what other musicians who also program say, because I'm guessing they might have different experiences than me. So for me, music, I'm actually terrible at music theory, but I'm a good audio listener of, I can identify in a song like which notes are which makes playing or like making covers of songs easy for me. So I find it to be a more like creative and artistic task compared to software engineering, which can be like, I think what I like about front end is that I can visually see what I'm making and know when something is off. But I do think that programming is more left brain, because you're balancing a bunch of different variables and doing a lot of debugging and trying to problem solve, whereas I've found music more to be like either athletic, because you're doing a lot of like muscle memory. Like I play violins, so practicing involves muscle memory and playing the same notes over and over again and perfecting it and listening to it and then like perfecting it. So I think it is different. But I don't know, maybe like I grew up with music and maybe it did give me some sort of discipline.
I think that there are some similarities in there, because when you say, oh, I need to play this note over and over, or this part of the music, you have to memorize things. When you're programming, you kind of have to use some ideas over and over, and then you have to like organize your code in a nice way. And like for people that use Vim or Emacs, they kind of memorize the commands to do like some code modification. So it's similar, you know. And also when you write a composition, you have to think about how's the violin going to sound and how's the piano will sound, you know. So how do you have to like kind of mix them together, and they have to work perfectly over a certain amount of time. So when you have like different programs running that interact, it's kind of similar, I'd say. But I don't know much about music, but I know about coding, and yeah, I think it's related.
Yeah, I can see the analogies there.
And what about the opposite? Do you apply some coding ideas to the way you create your music? Like, of course, besides the inspiration for your new album, but I mean, in the process of creating music.
Well, this album really is the first album I've made. So, actually, like, when I looked at the song title, I actually did try very hard to try to make the music represent what the programming concept was. Maybe I'll have a better answer once I've composed more songs. With composing music, it's maybe, I don't know if you can draw another analogy from this, but most of it was laying down a bass track and then piling stuff on top of it, and kind of doing a lot of improv as well and trying to figure out what works. So it was a little bit like laying down like, I don't know, some models and not really having a design, but then kind of making it up as you went, as you're creating a website, which I experienced when. So there's a website for Violin.play. It's the website URL is Violin.play.com, which I spent like a weekend working on, and I had no idea what it was going to look like before I designed it, and then I made the site using React and Material UI, and I hosted it on Netlify, which was really nice for hosting. And yeah, so I think there's an analogy there in terms of kind of knowing what I needed to make, and then it kind of came together as I put more elements onto the page.
And do you have a YouTube channel too, right?
Yeah, my YouTube is at youtube.com/lpnotes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the channel, because you have some very famous covers from like very known. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, nobody's asked me about that before in a podcast. So those covers I made because I really, really love the songs. And I used to have, I guess I haven't really made a cover recently, but at like a certain point in my life when a song got stuck in my head, I would really, really want to make a violin arrangement of it. So the Metallica song and the Game of Thrones song, there's like a Pirates of the Caribbean song. They're all like arrangements of 3 to 5 violins that I first notated on like on using MuseScore, which is a musical notation software that's open source and free. And then I would make the arrangement and then like play each part, record it, put the video together, and then publish it. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Because they're all covers, I've never made any money from it, but I really enjoyed making them.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I personally enjoyed a lot because I don't know if you know the Apocalyptica.
Band.
They started doing covers like from Metallica and some other rock songs as well. So it kind of remind me of them a little bit.
Oh, you're actually spot on, because that Metallica cover is actually a cover of Apocalyptica's cover of Nothing Else Matters. I think they had 4 cellos, but I only used 3 violins. That's the only difference.
Mm-hmm. You have also a project on Kickstarter, right? Why did you decide to use crowdfunding for your project?
I think I talked a little bit about taking the Launch Your Side Project course in 2014 when I was in New York, and the founder of that program, his name is Gary Chow. He actually, I think, just recently published his own podcast, but he's a very very smart person who was teaching a university class at the School of Visual Arts for a while with another instructor, and they had a course that challenged graduate students in design to make $1,000 in 1 month from a Kickstarter project. So I've always thought that was a pretty cool idea, and that's kind of the reason why I launched this project on Kickstarter a few months ago, because I was kind of also scared of the idea of asking for money online. So I wanted to get over that fear, and the goal I set wasn't $1,000; it was $100, because I was pretty sure like I'd ask a couple of friends, and each of them would give like $10, and it'll meet my goal. So I was honestly blown away when like a lot of friends came out and supported the project, but also a lot of strangers ended up backing the project, including there was one note I got from a stranger who lives in New York City, and his personal message was that he decided to go into law instead of music like 50 years ago. And that's why he's backing my project, because he wants to support musicians on Kickstarter. And
that is so cool.
Yeah, it was a really amazing note. And he gave like way above any of the tiers that I had listed. Yeah, and I guess more recently there was someone who, I actually literally launched this album a few days ago. So the morning after, I sent out the messages to my backers on Patreon, Kickstarter, around midnight, as one does, because I think a lot of side projects you just end up finishing at midnight. And then the next morning, I got a note from someone who told me that my music really helped with his struggles with anxiety, and yeah, and it was I think the fact that it was from a stranger, I really appreciated, because it's so much easier for friends to just always be supportive, I think.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, I think that pushing out yourself out there is definitely something challenging. I feel that for us, we felt the same with the podcast, but that's the beauty of it, right? You have people that you don't know, or you had no idea what you could get from pushing yourself out there. But it's pretty good to see how far things go, and then you feel a little better, and at the end you're like, wow, it isn't something really complicated. Sometimes you just need a push or more self-confidence, right? But I'm really happy that you did it, because the album is really good. And yeah, so it's nice to see that people are supporting your project and everything.
Yeah, thank you. I was also just going to say that your podcast, I think, is a great example of putting things out there, and I'm glad that you created it and we're having this conversation now.
That's true. Like, if we didn't have the podcast, Thiago and I wouldn't be here, like, asking you all of those questions and getting to know about Code Buddies and all of that. So what are you working on right now? Are you focusing primarily on Code Buddies? Are you doing other side projects besides your musical projects?
Yeah, so as of a couple of days ago, the music album is finally out. So I'm happy to be done with that. Code Buddies, it's Hacktoberfest this month, so there's a lot of actually a little bit of pressure from I'm feeling from the community and contributors who want to contribute to figure out how to project plan like specific issues that people could help with for Hacktoberfest. We're calling it V3, the third version of the Code Buddies website. Yeah, I think that's really much it in terms of side projects for me.
What if I went to listen to your album?
Actually, I want to offer like listeners of this podcast a secret code to the website for the album. So Violin.play.com !, codename equals hexdevs, and then the secret code is merge conflict. Yeah. Otherwise, you can listen to it on like Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, etc.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks. I hope people will use it. We will definitely do so.
Thanks. Yeah, there's some Easter eggs I put on there if you enter the. I mean, it's not too much. It's just like mainly access to the songs if you don't have Spotify. But
okay, so in terms of the future for your projects, I'm sure that you mentioned some of them during the talk, but do you have something in mind that is bigger, that is going to take you more time and more effort for, I don't know, next year, next 2 or 3 years?
That's a good question. I think kind of a personal goal that I still have on my back burner is just becoming a better software engineer. Luckily, I feel like the job that my current full-time job is offering me like a lot of opportunities to grow, and I also recently went from a remote job to like a job that has a office as well, and but this new job has lots of pair programming opportunities, which I really love, and I feel like I'm already improving in my like coding abilities, or I mean not abilities but like experience, and I hope to make more YouTube videos as well. I like how video you can capture what people look like as well as what the scenery looks like. By the way, if you do end up like wanting to make videos and want like tips for different software, let me know. I'm happy to share like what I went through in terms of finding software.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, hoping to just continue to be creative and have a good work-life balance.
Yeah, thanks. That's really important too.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Linda, for coming. It was really great talking to you. We learned some new things. Like we don't know much about music, but seeing the stuff you're doing, we're really like inspired to do more and do different things. So it's really cool to see someone doing cool things. So it's really inspiring.
Yeah, well, likewise.
Okay, so thank you so much, Linda. It was a really inspiring talk to me, and yeah, I hope it will inspire people as well.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, thank you, Stephanie and Thiago.
Thank you. If you want to get more updates from us, check out our website at hexdevs.com and sign up for the newsletter.